What's up guys, EMG Smash Central here. In the past few vlog type videos I've done, there's always at least one or two people in the comments that say I look like J-Tails. Well, I've got my quarterly haircut sometime last week, as you can see, so I thought it'd be funny. Let me know in the comments if you still think I look like J-Tails. But for the point of this video, this time I wanted to discuss the Smashbox, which is a third-party controller being developed from the ground up to kind of mimic a GameCube controller, but be more like an arcade fight stick, fight pad sort of thing. The reason why I'm saying it's a third-party controller being developed from the ground up is because it's a lot different from just modding a GameCube controller that already exists or adding something to a GameCube controller in some sort of fashion. The reason for this video is to debate whether or not the Smashbox should be allowed in tournament play, but before we get into that, I'll just give you guys a brief overview of what the Smashbox is, what it does, what it's capable of doing, and what it isn't capable of doing. Since there's only so much I can show with images, I'd rather not just rip clips from other videos. I highly suggest checking out the videos posted by Smashbox creator Dustin and Smasher Gravy, which I'll link in the video description below. Those two videos really show what the Smashbox is and isn't capable of with on-screen demonstrations and whatnot. The reason why this is such a big deal is because since the dawn of Melee in 2001, we have only really used GameCube controllers, at least in tournament play. Unfortunately, GameCube controllers weren't exactly designed for a hardcore, fast-paced competitive Melee, leaving many players with painful hand issues and just outright deterring certain players more accustomed to fight sticks from playing Smash altogether. The Smashbox creates an alternative for both these painful issues, but the big question is, should it be allowed in tournaments? Does it provide an unfair advantage? Well, let's go over some info. The Smashbox is basically a GameCube controller fight stick with the attack buttons on the right side of the pad and the analog joystick on the left side, except it's been converted into digital buttons. The upper set of buttons is simply up, down, left, and right. However, the lower set of buttons allow you to input specific directional angles when combining them with the up, down, left, and right buttons. Now, the huge advantage that these two button sets have over an analog control stick is that you can input the exact angle you want every single time, just by pressing 2 or 3 buttons simultaneously. This includes recovery angles, drifting in the air, wave dashing, shield dropping, wave landing, and more. All of these require specific directional inputs that can be hard to perform consistently on a control stick. However, if you practice and master the timing on the Smashbox, you can input these techniques and mechanics perfectly every single time. What makes this huge advantage not so huge of an advantage is that while yes, you can get a specific, perfect input every single time if you want in practice, using a fight pad to play a game like Melee that's only been played on GameCube controllers for 15 years is pretty hard to say the least. Just the simple things like jumping in and drifting backwards would take an immense amount of practice and repetition to feel natural. Simple directional inputs that you would usually do by tilting your thumb in a direction now have to be performed by hitting 1 to 3 buttons simultaneously. So yes, the digital control stick buttons allow for very precise inputs, which makes things like perfect wave shines and shield dropping just a matter of button timing. However, there are a ton of simplicities that are lost when using the digital inputs. When it comes to the good old-fashioned GameCube controllers, a lot of them don't even work properly straight out of the box. Go to the character selection screen and hold up. Once you reach the top of the screen, if you notice your cursor start to move to the left or right, that means your controller's control stick wasn't calibrated properly or it got damaged while, it was in the box or something. Currently, there's a controller modification that's allowed in tournaments that's used as a makeshift control stick calibration, which helps players perform advanced techniques more consistently. The mod I'm talking about is adding notches to the gate of your control stick. These gate notches create easy points to rest the control stick at, and are usually added at the angles needed for specific recovery angles, wave dash lengths, and shield dropping. Some GameCube controllers are just naturally easier to shield drop with because of the miscalibration right out of the box. So how is any of this fair? Well, that's another big debate, possibly for another time. But if adding notches to your control stick gate in order to make advanced techniques easier is allowed in tournament play, shouldn't the Smashbox be allowed as well? One could even argue that it might be harder to perform certain techniques on a Smashbox compared to a GameCube controller with notches, since you'd have to press multiple buttons rather than tilt the control stick in a certain direction that's already notched into your gate. In Smash 4, you can also change your control scheme to whatever it is you want, and there are a few control schemes out there that make certain advanced techniques easier, such as the Beto control scheme. These controller configurations are also allowed in tournaments, so it's definitely something to consider. Currently, the Smashbox has been approved for the first major tournament of 2017, towards the end of January. We'll be able to see how Gravy performs with it and have a more educated discussion in the weeks following. However, with the current facts and information available, I'd have to say that personally, I think the Smashbox should be a legal controller. I don't think it's going to give anyone an unfair advantage at first, but we might see an insane evolution in the metagame if players start using the Smashbox and get really good with it. If you adjust to it to the point where you can perform inputs comfortably and reliably, then I do think it's possible we might see the rise of an extremely technical and precise melee. 20XX perhaps? If we do start to see an obvious skill gap between players using the Smashbox and players who stuck with the GameCube controller, then I think we can discuss whether we want our game to move in this direction competitively or if we want to keep it the way it's always been. Realistically, I just think the Smashbox will be a niche third-party controller that some players prefer over the GameCube controller. It creates an easier entry into the competitive scene for gamers that are used to playing fighting games on arcade sticks, and creates an alternative for players that aren't comfortable holding the GC controller, or for those who actually experience pain from using the controller. Some players are going to perform better on the Smashbox than they would on a GameCube controller, but that doesn't necessarily mean that everyone would benefit from it, or that it's the superior controller. Realistically, I don't think the Smashbox will evolve the metagame to a super technical Smashbox or bust type of thing, but it would be interesting to see, and the discussions that come from it would be interesting as well. But let me know what you think in the comments below. Do you think the Smashbox should be allowed in tournament play? I didn't really go over the purpose and point of tournaments in this video because I have another one planned soon that's going to cover that, but I really just wanted to talk about what the Smashbox is and isn't capable of, and what it could mean for the future of competitive Smash. Don't forget to check out the videos by the creator Hitbox Dustin and the Smasher Gravy, which I'll put in the video description below. Let me know what topics you'd like to see on this series next, and you can click the top video on your screen for the previous episode. As always, thanks for watching all the way until the end. I'm EMG Smash Central, and happy smashing.